You didn't live stream that just now?
Yeah, that one was, but I'm dividing them into parts. Okay, here we go. Part two. The part two again is shorter. Here we go. Is it up there? Good, good. Location of Messiah's birth. Now, I heard this recently there were some scholars actually claiming that Yeshua was not born in the Bethlehem that's near Jerusalem, but he was actually born in the Bethlehem that's up north in the Galilee. Does anybody have a problem with that? Debbie says yes. Anybody else say yes? You have a problem with that? Good. Okay, we got two saying problem. I hope all of you have a problem with that, because what does the scripture say? It tells us very specifically which Bethlehem. Bethlehem in Judea, not up in the Galilee. The text is very clear about which one it is. So those scholars who are making little claims apparently haven't even read the text. So what's my point in that part?
Don't believe the scholars.
Don't believe a scholar just because they're a scholar. Right? It's not like don't distrust all scholars and everything they say all the time, or necessarily.
Fact check the facts.
But check, yeah. Don't check and don't trust just because they have the title. Just like don't trust a person just because they have a lab coat on. It doesn't mean they're a doctor even. Right? And they might have been the last, even if they are a doctor, they might be the last one in their class, when they graduated. Maybe you want a second opinion when they tell you something that's dreadfully important. Anyway. All right.
And show will tell us that don't just believe him, check the scriptures for yourself.
Right? Like the Bereans, right? Bereans. Okay. We want to be like that and check the scriptures for ourselves. Everyone says that, but how many people do it? How many people do it? They listen to somebody else who did it. How can you do it if you don't know the language? You can do it to some extent. How far can you go? Right? There's a limit on how far you can go if you don't know the language. Because you have to trust somebody's translation is right. Well, which one is it? Which one are you trusting? Right? And today there are so many. Yeah. So it could be, sometimes they all match. So you're good. Sometimes they don't. What do you do? You with me? All right. So location of Messiah's birth. Okay. Well, I told you one issue with it. Some modern scholars being goofy, right? Well, how about this one? When the Magi, who would have, by the way, been, who do you think the Magi were? Who do you think they were?
There were some guys from the Middle East, right? Babylonians.
Middle East? Probably Babylon. Yeah, why do we say probably Babylon?
They were watching stars.
Well, there were astronomers, Magi, yeah. I mean, there are people other groups. But why Babylon? I mean, who said that? Daniel. Right. What about Daniel? He was with all of them. He became one of them. He became a leader among them, a leader of the whole empire, right? Very well renowned. And a lot of other Jewish people were there as well. So when you're talking about Magi, coming from a faraway land, they saw the star in the east. Does that mean they looked up and the star was in the east, or does that mean, because then they would be in the Mediterranean if they were heading to the east to get there. No, they saw the star, they were in the east, they saw the star. So that means somewhere in the east, Babylon is to the east. They're called Magi. The people in the court of Babylon were called Magi. They were astronomers. So they did study the stars. And there were a lot of people when the exile in Babylon was over who were Jewish who never left. Did you know that? They were still there. So there probably still would have been many Jewish people in the court still studying astronomy who were Jewish. And so this answers an age-old question that no one seems to want to ask. Why did the Magi care if there was a king of Judah being born? Unless they were Jewish. People were superimposed like modern, oh, well, we're believers now and we're Gentiles, so obviously then all the Gentiles would have cared too. It's neither Messiah. Well, they didn't know that. Wouldn't they have all cared too? Well, they didn't know that. They didn't know anything about a Messiah yet. So why did these guys care? They're Jewish. It's a Jewish king. The one who's talked about the star rising out of Jacob in a prophecy back in Genesis. Who they were waiting for forever. Right? The star's coming. That's the star. We've got to go check it out. They go to check it out, right? They go to check it out. They come to King Herod's court. This is Herod the Great, the older Herod. Know anything about Herod?
He likes to party.
I like to party? Okay. Why is he called Herod the Great? I hear some mumbling, but I don't know what you say. What was great about him? He was a terrible person. He was right. He killed one of his wives because he was jealous. He killed his own sons because he thought they were. And then afterwards he felt bad, and he built these really big buildings, to commemorate their memory and stuff. When he was going to die, he set down a list of people so that when he died, all of those people were to be executed when he died, along with him, so that just in case they were scheming against him, not going to work. I mean, this guy was. And what else do we know about him from the Bible?
Ties with the Romans.
Oh yeah.
And they made him great because they gave him property, they gave him money, they gave him a lot of political power. So that's why the people feared him, right?
And he stayed in. His power. He kind of stayed in power. He had a good relationship with the Caesar because when there was the little civil war with Mark Antony and which one won again? Augustus, I believe it was, right? Yeah, Augustus. When they went through that little civil war, Herod came to the aid of the winner, the one who was the eventual winner. So that put him in good with the Romans. That's why they didn't really, after his death, Romans kind of got rid of, the real reign of any actual Jewish king. There's no real power anymore. No power over life and death. That's why when Yeshua was going to die, they had to go to the court before Pilate. But the reason they call him great doesn't really have to do with the Romans, but that's a great point to bring up about him. It's excellent to know more about him. It's because of his building projects. When we go on a trip to Israel, you go to Caesarea, like that whole thing, the whole Roman colony, these huge aqueducts and stuff that you'll see. You'll see the second, one of the great wonders of the ancient world was Herod's temple. The second temple already existed, but he made a huge building project out of it and made it way bigger and way more ornate. Also, we'll go to, there are two places, two sort of mountaintop resorts, I guess you could say, or retreats, built on the top of mountains, like massive forts on the top of mountains. One is called the Herodian, if I remember right. And the other one, which we won't go to, the other one is, anyone? Masada, by the Salt Sea. It's not by the Salt Sea. It's not really a lake. It's not really dead. So it's the Salt Sea, and next to it, when we go there on a trip, you'll see, we'll stay at the lake to be able to float in the water without trying and everything. And then we'll go to Masada. We'll go up to the top of the mountain and this amazing fortress to be built. Then later on, long after he died, after the rebellion against Rome, and the temple falls and all that, around 72 BC is where the war really ends at that site, because the last of the holdouts were the Sicarii. They were zealots named after a particular weapon they used to assassinate people. Yeah, this is sorry, who were up at the top of the mountain, and the Romans used slaves to build a massive ramp to go up to the top of the mountain because they were Jewish slaves. The people, that was the eventual way they finally conquered the mountain, because they couldn't get up there. You'll see from the top of the mountain, you can look down, you'll see the outlines of the Roman forts down below. And it was a long bed. There was nothing they could do. They finally came up with, you know what? I wonder if they'll kill their own people if we do this. They used Jewish slaves to build a ramp to go up to the gate at the top of the mountain.
Like the people themselves were the ramp?
No, they had to build it.
Oh, I was gonna say. I'm picturing all those people stacked up.
Anyway, and then so they broke through that gate, and all the people who were left at the top of the mountain, they killed themselves rather than submitting to slavery to Rome. So anyway, but that's beside the point. Sorry. So Herod the Great. What else do we know about Herod the Great then? From your Bible, from the Gospels. What did he do? And it's not a great thing. He killed John the Baptist. That's a horrible thing, right? He had beheaded just to make someone happy from his birthday party so he would look good. What else? Yes, that's what I'm looking for. Was that what you were saying as well? That he had all the infants killed in Bethlehem that were 2 years old or younger. Because that's how long it had been since he'd been born. But that doesn't match the movie I saw. Right? And where did they go to kill? When the Magi came to Jerusalem, the capital, to see King Herod the Great, what did King Herod do? He consulted his theologians and his religious leaders and all these people. And what did he ask them to tell him? Because those Magi came to see the newly born king of the Jews. What did he ask his scholars then? We said, where? Where is the Messiah to be born? He didn't want to ask the Magi. He didn't want to give them any clue to what the plans were. Because they came to honor and worship him. Now, he had a different plan. He wanted to keep that under wraps. And what did all of the Jewish scholars at the time say? Bethlehem, the house of bread in Judea, because he's of the house of David, so everyone knows, including the most common scholars you would hope, but apparently that. Right? So, when Herod finds this out, he says to have all those kids 2 years and younger killed. Then we can match the scriptures up and we can see how his birth takes place. He's at the temple after 8 days. Herod wishes he knew that. And then he goes to Egypt and hiding because you never know to what lengths Herod's going to go when the time comes. But these guys are coming much later. He's too late. He's not even in Bethlehem. Where is he by then? Well, he went to Egypt. So he was still in Egypt when that happened. When they came back, they went to Nazareth. Or Nazareth. Till after he died, yeah, so it was a while. That's why the answer was correct. He was in Egypt, actually, when that happened. What about Nazareth? Which we're going to try to go to the actual Nazareth, not the one in the middle in the valley where everybody goes and there's the fancy person. There's a church that's very ancient. And you'll see in the church that's very ancient, like a carved menorah in the wall, for example. And the mikvah where you would do immersions, for example. But we're going to try to go to the older one. At least go to see the cliffs there. Anybody reading along with us in the scriptures that are lined up in your bulletins? Okay. If you're not, say okay. But what did we read about recently? Yeshua goes back to his hometown, and he reads the scripture that somebody who read the Haftarah today read. Or was it you? Was it from the brief? Was it from the brief? Where Yeshua was reading it, but the portion that he read was from the Haftarah, And that's the portion he reads. And what happens when he reads that? He reads that portion. It's a messianic portion. The Ruach, the Spirit of God, has anointed me in order to do these things. Did you know all the Jewish people understood this is something Messiah is coming to do? This is a messianic passage. And Yeshua sits down. By the way, that's also interesting. See how I'm sitting down? You stood up to read the word. You sat down. Rabbi sat down to teach. He sat down to make his comments. Everybody's got their eyes on him. He's in Nazareth, his own hometown, and he's looking out at the people, and he says, today, and you're hearing, this scripture has been fulfilled. Now, without looking, close book for a second, what happens then?
Everybody gets all upset.
That's exactly the answer I'm looking for, and it's exactly wrong.
Amongst themselves.
Not yet. Still wrong reason. That happens, just not yet.
They ask him a question.
Now you can look open book. Now you can look open book. The first reaction is not what you think it is. Luke?
Okay, so
Luke
first it
chapter
says-
4, and you're looking at verse 20 and 21 and 22. 22. 21 is today, as you have read it, this passage in the Tanakh was fulfilled. What does 22 say? Everyone was speaking well of him and marveling at such appealing words were coming forth from his mouth. He's claiming a passage about himself, and the people in his hometown are like, cool, the Messiah comes from here? He's one of us? That's pretty cool. When did they get angry? When did they get angry? And they start saying, Joseph, can the Messiah be Joseph's son? And all that, right? And we look at Joseph's lineage. He's descended from David, so the answer would be yes. Right? But they go further. What does it say? Then. The next word, verse 23, then. Then what happens? Yeshua says to them, no doubt, he's looking at these people who are prideful. Right? He's one of us. And prideful. And what does he say? No doubt you'll quote this proverb to me, doctor, cure yourself. When does that happen? When he's on the slot, the execution stake. We heard about all the things that are going on to him here. And he says, no prophet is accepted in his hometown. And then he goes into the peeps, a couple of goyim, a couple of Gentiles whose faith was really strong and who had miracles happen for them during times of Eliyahu, Elijah, or Elisha. Verse 28, on hearing this, everyone in the synagogue was filled with fury. Don't be talking about my faith. Don't be putting down my faithfulness, Yeshua. I don't care if you're the Messiah or not. I tacked that part out. But you see, he's starting attacking their faithfulness. No doubt you'll say these things about me. No doubt you'll want me to do this, like I'm a puppet for you, and you're the king of kings. You're the king of Israel, not me. Right? Isn't it the attitude a lot of people have? You'll want me to do tricks for you. You want me to do little miracles just to please you. Right? And then he started talking about faith. Some Gentiles who had very strong faith, as opposed to that. Then they have fewer. It's not about the claim. You see? Okay. At least not in this text. It's not about the claim. All right. So we have scholars, but we have to say this is from the gospel that those scholars, those Jewish scholars, were saying the Messiah has to come from Bethlehem. Right? Those were Jewish scholars, but we're trusting the gospel. So if we're a Jewish person out there looking on live stream, why am I supposed to get my answers from your book. It's kind of a circular argument. You're saying I should believe your book because I should believe your book. So what did the ancient Jewish people say about where the Messiah should be born? Are there any extra biblical, some other source outside of the gospel that will give us the same answer? Well, guess what? There is. The Targum of Jonathan. Now, do you know what a Targum is? What?
It's like a commentary.
It's like a commentary, kind of. It's, when the people went away into exile, they started to use languages of the people around them in the exile, right? If it's in places where they spoke Greek, they started speaking Greek. If it's in Babylon, they started speaking Aramaic, Akkadian, right? Mostly Aramaic. And they come back to the land. A lot of people didn't relearn Hebrew. A lot of people did, so there were different areas in the land where Hebrew was prevalent. Some areas Aramaic was more prevalent. This is why they started to make a special translation, special copies of the Bible in Aramaic called the Targums. And when they made those versions, the Targums in Aramaic of the Scripture, so that people could understand them more easily, first though, how could they make those translations if they didn't know Hebrew? Some people say they didn't know Hebrew. Obviously, they had to know Hebrew, or they couldn't translate anything from Hebrew into anything. Correct? Okay, so they made translations for the people who didn't speak Hebrew at that point. Okay? When they made those translations, they put a lot of extra in there because the purpose was to explain the text as well at the same time. They didn't even, one could argue they didn't even consider that, the Targums, as scripture, although it was an interpretation of scripture, but with it's sort of like our amplified versions today, where like a word could mean several different things, so the amplified doesn't bother to try to figure out which one it is, it just throws them all in there. And sometimes it could mean all of those things, and sometimes it really means one of them. Yeah, it was kind of like that, with a little extra as well. So that's what the Targums are. Now here's the Targum of Jonathan. It's the portion that speaks about a prophecy that was understood to be messianic. It's called from Micah chapter 5, verse 1. And your Christian versions, you'll see it marked as verse 2, because there's a different numbering system. And the comment on that verse is this. This is what the Targum says, which is sort of a comment and sort of the scripture, right? And you, O Bethlehem Ephrathah, well, yeah, you know what? Go ahead and flip there so you can see it while I read this version. And you can see what's different. Micah 5:2. Micah 5, really 5:1, but I'm thinking most of your versions are going to say 5:2. Christian versions. What page am I on? Well, it depends, right? You have the Complete Jewish Bible 700? Okay. So it says in the Targum of Jonathan, everybody looking? Targum of Jonathan, and you, O Bethlehem Ephrathah, you who were too small to be, I got a typo to make here. It should be T-O-O. It's too small. To be numbered among the thousands of Judah, from you shall come forth before me the Messiah to exercise dominion over Israel. Do any of your versions say the Messiah there? Yeah. So an outside the Bible source, the Targums, which is a Jewish book, all right, showing from a Jewish source. Now Matthew was also Jewish. Luke was also Jewish. Well, it could be argued about Luke, but I believe he was Jewish, and we could argue about that some other day. But an outside of the Bible, Jewish source showing you the same answer that Messiah is who's being talked about here in Micah 5:2. All right? So what you have here is Bethlehem is the place. What does Bethlehem mean?
House of bread.
House of bread. Excellent. Good job. So we have at the house of bread, or from the house of bread, comes the bread from heaven, the kernel of wheat that can't bear fruit unless it dies and is planted. John 12, 23 and 24. Another different slide. Yeah, there you go. What else did he? So these are things Yeshua called himself: bread from heaven, like the manna in the wilderness. He was also the bread from heaven. He called himself this kernel of wheat, that unless it dies and is buried in the earth, it won't bring forth fruit. Look in this room, that's the kind of fruit he's talking about. He also called himself, there's also another name for him that has to do with bread. Do you remember? Can you guys see that okay? Is it better or worse than the TV, just so I know? You like it? Okay, these people at home can see. So it's the afikomen. When we're doing Passover, and there's the matzah, which is striped and pierced and all of those things, it's not just matzah. When he said, "This is my body," what he was talking about was that piece that had been wrapped in linen and hidden away until later, which was then taken out, right, at the end, and reappeared, and was broken and shared among them, called the afikomen, which can mean two things. It can mean dessert, because, the bread of affliction is so tasty. Let me get that for dessert when the tray comes around. Or, the other Greek possibility is the one who is coming, the coming one. Let that sink in. And all Jewish people around the world are using this term, and they prefer dessert, of course. And that's a Greek term. It's interesting how many Greek terms: synagogue, Greek term; Sanhedrin, Greek term. Names of a lot of the Maccabees after the war started naming their children Greek names. Anyway, but assimilation is more than just terminology. That's okay to some extent. What's not okay was losing the faith, like having the faith assimilated, taking other things into it, worshiping God in ways he said not to do, for example, right? Okay. So let's actually look at that verse. And this is where we end this portion, maybe today. The verse, Micah 5:1 or 2. And you, Bethlehem Ephratah, small in regards to happenings among the thousands of Yehudah, from you to me will come to be the one ruling in Israel, but his goings forth are from ancient times, from the days of eternity. Now let me ask you a question, a very simple question. How many mortal people, like you and I, were born from eternity? What do you think that means, from eternity? Born from eternity. Your goings forth are from ancient times. What is it saying? There are other scriptures that can tell us, that can lead us to the conclusion, right? Before the creation of the earth and whatnot, he existed. That's kind of what this is saying too, isn't it? That's why some Jewish sources, rabbinic sources even today, will say the Messiah, that the Spirit in the beginning that was hovering over the waters, some of them say, I believe it's the Ruach, but they say that's the Spirit of Messiah. And then on the flip side, they'll say Messiah is not divine. Now explain to me how that works. He's just a regular guy, but he was there at creation? From eternity? He's just a regular guy, but he rides in the clouds up to Messiah, up to the throne of God? Okay. So you guys in this room don't struggle with that, I guess, probably. So, but so people who are watching might. And so people who you run into contact with might. And you might struggle with those things, even if not openly, sometimes on your own. For instance, even if not with a concept, but where does it really say that? Well, this is a place where it really says that. The goings forth of Messiah are from ancient times, from the days of eternity. Me, okay, so remember Yom, me, and then a Yod, me, and that A makes it plural. From days, Olam, Yime Olam, from the days of eternity. You with me? That's what the Hebrew says. That version might have sounded very odd to you. Did it match anybody in the room? The version I read? It did? Really? Because that was my direct translation.
It goes, who's coming forth is from ancient days.
Oh, I mean that whole verse, but I did that whole verse there. But anyway, okay. Well, good. They were very close to me, so they must be pretty good. I'm just saying. But that was a direct, what I read you was my direct translation from the Hebrew. Okay. Why is that important, though? Was this one meaningful for anybody here? And why? Are you tired? We're tired. We don't know. Just give us the answer.
I mean, I'll say, for me, the genealogy was very useful because, that's something I've definitely struggled with in my life is just understanding, Messiah in general, just understanding his relationship to us and being born, being taught, virgin birth, and then it's like virgin birth, like that's kind of a tough one, and then just believing he is who he says he is, that's, I think if we're honest, we all struggle with that at times, maybe early on, just you want to know who you're putting your faith in.
Yeah.
And it's very comforting to know that the genealogy is Mary's genealogy for me. Very comforting. So thank you for that.
Okay. Well, there are like 2 or 3 more. I'll save those for a different day. But so genealogy. But what about this location thing? Why does it matter?
For me, if Joseph's genealogy, she was just asking me about Joseph's genealogy also being from David, but for me personally, it did not make sense, like when I was younger, if Joseph was from David, but he's not Yeshua's father biologically, then how is Yeshua from the line of David? You know what I mean? That's something early on that I didn't understand, and I'm sure that there's a lot of people out there who don't understand that too.
If you start looking at a tree, a genealogy tree, who's David, then this comes down over here, this one comes down over here. She's over here in this one, he's over here in this one, and yet they all ended up trickling back, or they trickled down from David.
You have to study to get to that point. You have to study to know
You
that.
have to know genealogy, but the trees keep coming down, yeah.
And just the fact that she's
So it
in
could be
there,
like some.
that she's in there as the instead of husband of Joseph, that's heavy for me. That's like a big deal for me. So feeling really good about this one.
So what about the location? Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I was gonna say for this one, and what version is this?
John's.
Oh, I translated that directly.
Oh, okay, so that would be, because that's important because I know, in terms of finding, I've been reading certain things during my studies and trying to find things in the Old Testament where I've seen, of course, we discussed several about the Messiah, Yeshua, but this one here is just cut and dry. I can explain to
Yeah. What's cut and dry about it? What do you get from this verse?
It's saying that from you to me will come to be the one ruling in Israel, but his goings forward from ancient time, from the days of eternity. So that, to me, that tells me about Yeshua,
Yeah,
Messiah. But in terms of Orthodox Jews, they're saying, I've read certain things about what they say the Messiah is and where he is, and that kind of.
and the text is very clear
Yeah, there's no.
about divinity. There's a big movement these days, even in certain parts of Christianity, where people are starting to deny the divinity again. These things pop up every now and then in different places. So this is an important one to have in your mind. We're talking about memorization scriptures. What ones are important to keep in your mind? Well, this isn't a bad one right here. And also, what you're talking about, dealing with Jewish people in love and trying to, help. Remember the Targum of Jonathan, what the Jewish scholars in the first century, the Targums even said, that's the Messiah, I underlined. But it's not my quote. I didn't write that one. It's the Messiah who is coming forth from eternity. You see? And what do you think about the house of bread thing? Why of all places he could have came to, why did he come from Bethlehem?
Bread of life.
Think about a loaf of bread. Right? It's like he's one of us, he's part of us. It's like the house of bread, right? The people inside would be like a loaf of bread. They're the bread. It's a house of what? A house of bread. So the thing that lives there would be bread. So the people there are bread, right? And they're all one family, right? That's kind of how people were. The families stay together. So it's one big loaf of bread. So he's one of them. You can't have a piece of the bread that's totally not from the loaf of bread. It doesn't work that way.
Put a cracker in the bread.
You know what I mean? He's one of them. He's one of us. And why bread? All these analogies about bread. How significant is that? Go ahead.
How do you get medicine for celebrating
Yeah, what is it that we have over on the table?
Probably bread.
What kind of bread?
Probably.
Challah. How is challah made?
I don't know, but it's delicious.
Why? Why is it intertwined?
That's symbolic of being.
Because we're all mingled together, and we're still one loaf. We're all part of each other. Separate in one body. Yeah. And that's what so that's what we're going to do. We're going to stop at this point, and we can think about the Messiah coming from Bethlehem, and we can think about the time when he said, "Remember, this is my body broken for you." Now, this isn't Pesach, so we're not going to use matzah. We're going to still use bread. We're going to use lechem, and it's got a purpose of its own to show how we're all one. We're all part of each other. And for believers, he said we're like brothers and sisters to each other. You're grafted in, right? Welcome to the tribe. You're grafted in, right? We're all part of each other. Commonwealth or not. Natural branches, wild branches are still in the same tree together. All right. I think before I stop and we do that little Oleg, I want to let you know what's coming. And I think you're really going to like this. Now, next week is just going to be the concert. So you don't have to worry. I'm not going to talk. And the concert is just going to be there. We'll probably have a little short Torah service because people have verses to do. And then the next week, I want to come back to this because it's going to tie in with Hebrews 5:5 that we're going to get to. And there are 3 sections left. One is the timing of Messiah's coming and his death. finding that in the scripture very plainly and laying it out, mapping it out for you. Okay? That would be the key one. Another key is the purpose of Messiah, which is extremely important. Am I right? Why does God have this? Remember these servant passages in Isaiah and the suffering servant. Who is that suffering servant? How can we figure out or if it's the Messiah? What tells us? What really breaks it down so we know which one it is?
How he suffers?
There are passages in Isaiah that talk about the servant of God, and he's a suffering servant. There are like 5 different portions. And people claim, including Isaiah 53, for example, which is extremely important, and so a lot of people claim that that's Israel. How do we know who the suffering servant is? Okay? And in conjunction with that, it will be extremely important to understand what his purpose is. And is there a text in those passages that tells us what his purpose is? So you need to know that for yourself as well as for sharing with other people. And the last one, so it's extremely important. And the last one is going to deal with all 3. You know, if it takes another week, we just go on with that. I'm not going to drag it out until you're half dead and not understand what I'm saying anymore. So the last one will deal with some fun topics like the word used for virgin there. Is it really virgin in Hebrew? What about immaculate? I almost said immaculate reception. That was Franco Harris, right? Immaculate conception, or the who's Pantera? You ever heard that one? Who does the Talmud say was Yeshua's father? Do you know? Okay, find out about that. And there's another term. What was it again? Perpetual. You guys, some people come up with some stuff. Perpetual virginity, I think it was. I think it's what the Orthodox believe. Yep, perpetual virginity. Have you heard that one? Okay, so we're going to deal with all of those topics. Very interesting stuff, I think. All right, but for now, let's go ahead and close. We can gather in our circle for the blessing, and we'll have Oleg. If I could get a couple of volunteers after the blessing to go and get the grape juice and the little cups and some waters and bring them over here. We'll get the bread over here on that. That would be great. For those at home, shalom. Thank you for joining us. I hope you can see what was up there.